Everyone comes from a family, and every family's got stuff. And that means that we all have stuff in our personal history, which is what the counseling psychology world means when they use the term family of origin. Hi, I'm Matt Sandford. I'm a licensed mental health counselor with the LifeWorks group. So first of all, are you aware that you have a FOO? By that question, I mean, are you aware that your family history was not just what happened in your family, but it's how your family culture and norms and roles and experiences and messages all impacted you and formed your belief system and your worldview, and to varying degrees prepared you for how you do life now. Many people rarely explore these concepts very deeply. Many I talk to will generally say that their childhood was great or good or fine or okay or terrible or some variation, but many have not explored it much more than that. And that seems to generally hold true whether the FOO was rather good or rather bad. I think that's because our FOO is so pervasive and ingrained in our everyday lives that we just don't think that it would even be something to examine. It's kind of like the way we adjust to something out of place in our homes, unless you're OCD. After walking by that tool or that bag of stuff about 20 or 30 times, it just seems to melt into the furnishings and I don't notice it anymore. Did I just admit too much about my home environment? So when no one in that environment does any examining, well then we don't develop the idea that that would be something worth doing. Instead, many families model the conception that this is who we are, this is what we do, so just accept it. This is almost this, there's almost this implied threat in examining it, isn't there? It's like if you want to examine it, then you're suggesting there's something wrong with it, and then the family will be offended by that notion. But what if, rather than it being something that's wrong to examine, that it's something that's unhealthy not to examine? Now, I'm going to guess that one of the top objections to this is that I'm encouraging people to blame their parents for their issues. And I hear what you're saying, but that's just not what I'm advocating. See, I think it's possible that someone might identify some past wounds or mistreatment, but examining FOO isn't for the purpose of placing blame. That won't get us to a healthy place just as much as not looking. So, if that's not what it's intended for, then what is the goal, you might be wondering? That's a great question. Let's look at some factors involving FOO and how to utilize it. So number one is that examining our FOO helps to understand ourselves better. See, living in a family is going to condition us. So we're going to learn ways to think and believe and perceive the world. We're going to learn a set of values about what's right or what's wrong, what's more or less important. We're going to learn how to relate to others. We're going to learn how to get our needs met, how to cope with stress. We're going to learn about what emotions are acceptable and which ones aren't. And we're going to learn through all these different forms of conditioning, like observation and modeling, besides the more direct forms of teaching. So families form us, sometimes intentionally, but many times without intention or forethought or planning. And you really can't understand what makes you tick without understanding how you were influenced. Okay, number two is that people are not robots. So I speak here of being conditioned by our family's norms and expectations and such, but I'm not saying that people are programmed by their environment. People are more complex than that, and we do have a personality. But our identity is formed through this intermixing of our environment and our personality. And so that's how you and your siblings can turn out to be really different people. So number three is that FOO is more than just your immediate family. I've been referring to family and environment as well, and our families are the main environmental factor, but our larger environment can certainly have influential power as well. Our friendships, our school, our sports, our environment, our church, the extended family, and the media all play this part in developing our worldview, our identity, and our styles of coping. Number four is examining our conditioning is for empowerment and for healing. Remember how much of our FOO goes unexamined. Well, that's also because our worldview is largely below our conscious level. We often don't really understand what motivates and drives us, what holds us back, what keeps us from being more productive or happy, and why we react in certain ways. See, our core beliefs live in our subconscious, and from there they drive the bus, shall we say. Sometimes our subconscious seems maybe mysterious or out of reach to us, but we can bring this valuable information to the surface through exploring our FOO. And in that, we can gain access to our beliefs and our choices, which means the ability to more directly foster our own healing and become more empowered. Okay, number five is examining our FOO is for our freedom. As I've represented it here, much of our conditioning, the conditioning of our FOO has likely gone on unexplored. And that means we won't understand some important things about how we cope and do life. And if we don't understand them, then we're going to really have a hard time getting free of the ones that don't function so well or the ones that are problematic for us. See, some of us struggle with a tendency towards negative or obsessional thinking patterns. Some of us struggle with anger or guilt or sexual issues, maybe with addictions, maybe anxieties, maybe relational hiccups, or any number of other such stuff. But what I'm saying is that the root to freedom many times lies in our past. I know this is the opposite of what the culture generally proclaims, but that really illustrates my point. See, the culture is another one of those conditioning factors that largely goes unexamined and unchallenged. So, don't believe everything the culture says. So I know that I've just challenged some norms about how to deal with family stuff in one's past. But if looking back at the effects of our environment is not about blaming or whining or staying rooted in the past, then maybe there's a way to look back that's profitable for you and for me. So becoming a FOO fighter doesn't mean to fight against your FOO, but to learn to not let it control or rule over you. Got it? If you'd like to find out more, call my office, email me, or visit my blog at counselingmatters.org.